Hello students and welcome to this video. The topic for our discussion today is a very famous poem by the poet J.M. Hopkins. Now before we move on to the poem, let's have a brief talk about the poet J.M. Hopkins. Hopkins was born in 1844 in London. He was an English poet और एक priest भी रह चुके हैं वो. एंड जिस टेक्निक के साथ, जिस इनोवेशन के साथ उन्होंने अपनी पोएम में गॉड को प्रेज किया है, गॉड की बाउंटी को एक्सप्रेस किया है, उसके लिए हॉपकिंस जाने जाते हैं. एंड जब भी हम हॉपकिंस की बात करते हैं तो कुछ कंसेप्ट्स हैं जो उनसे अटैच्ड हैं, उनको समझना आपके लिए बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है. और वो कंसेप्ट्स में सबसे पहले नाम आता है इनस्केप एंड इनस्ट्रेस का. स्टूडेंट्स, जो इनस्केप और इनस्ट्रेस के कंसेप्ट्स हैं वो इंडिविजुअलिटी और यूनिकनेस के बारे में है, और ये दोनों ही कंसेप्ट्स एक दूसरे को कॉम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं. और ये कंसेप्ट इस चीज़ पे एम्फेसाइज करता है कि इनस्केप, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इनस्केप फर्स्ट, इनस्केप इस बात पे एम्फेसाइज करता है कि गॉड की बनाई हुई हर चीज़, हर वो चीज़ जो नेचर ने बनाई है या जो गॉड ने बनाई है, वो यूनिक होती है, वो हर दूसरी चीज़ से डिफरेंट होती है. दैट इज़, अगर गॉड ने अलग अलग चीज़ें बनाई हैं नेचर में, तो हर चीज़ एक दूसरे से अलग होगी. हर चीज़ की एक यूनिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक होगी जो कि उसे दूसरी चीज़ों से अलग बनाएगी. हर वो चीज़ खूबसूरत होगी और दूसरी से अलग होगी. एंड द आइडिया बिहाइंड दिस बिलीफ इज थियोलॉजिकल. जो आइडिया है वो ये है कि गॉड नेवर रिपीट्स हिमसेल्फ. ओके, सो जो ये वैरिड ब्यूटी है, ये स्कैटर्ड ब्यूटी है, जो हर चीज़ अलग है, इसे हम इनस्केप कहते हैं. मीन्स इनस्केप is a particular feature of a certain natural structure, of a certain landscape, which make it different from any other thing. एंड हॉपकिंस का ये मानना था कि हर पोइट के अंदर जो हर चीज़ की यूनिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक है, यूनिक फीचर है, उसको ऑब्जर्व करने की कैपेसिटी और उसको रिकॉर्ड करने की कैपेसिटी हर आर्टिस्ट में होनी चाहिए. एंड जब आप हॉपकिंस की पोइट्री पढ़ेंगे, देन यू विल गेट टू सी द वे ही डिटेल्स what he thinks is unique about a particular sunset, about cloud formation, or even about waves. So that description which he would provide you will make you see his belief. You would agree to his belief that everything is beautiful in its own way, that everything is unique in itself, and there is something in everything that makes it different from other things. So, Inscape is about the unique feature of every single object, every single thing created by God. And Instress is about how you perceive that uniqueness as a reader, as an individual, as a person. आप उस varied beauty को, उस scattered beauty को, उस uniqueness को कैसे perceive करते हैं, that is known as Instress. That is the Instress, how it is received into the sight, into the memory and imagination, that is Instress. And Hopkins believed that it's the duty of the poet to find suitable images to depict the inscape, so that the readers can feel the Instress, so that they can recapture the poet's idea, the poet's perception and experience of that beauty, of that uniqueness. So students, Inscape and Instress is about the uniqueness of each created thing. और हम उस इंडिविजुअलिटी को कैसे परसीव करते हैं, कैसे एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं, कैसे ऑब्जर्व करते हैं, दैट इज अवर इंस्ट्रेस, दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन आवर इंस्ट्रेस. एंड हॉपकिंस को लगता था कि आर्टिस्ट जो है उनका काम होता है कि हर ब्यूटी को परसीव करना, उस यूनिकनेस को परसीव करना, वो कैपेसिटी रखना कि वो यूनिकनेस को, नेचर की जो गॉड की रिपीट ना करने की आर्ट है, उसको ऑब्जर्व करें और उसको इस तरह से एक्सप्रेस करें अपनी पोइट्री के थ्रू, ऐसे शब्दों में, ऐसे इमेजेस को यूज करके उसको प्रेजेंट करें कि जो उनके रीडर्स हैं वो उसको एक्सपीरियंस कर पाएं, उस इंस्ट्रेस को वो फील कर पाएं, उस एग्जैक्ट यूनिकनेस को वो कैप्चर कर पाएं. तो पोइट अगर उसे सुटेबली रिकॉर्ड करेंगे, एज इट इज रिकॉर्ड करेंगे, एंड वो रीडर को फील करवा पाते हैं उस यूनिकनेस को, तो दैट इज हिज in stress. I hope both the concepts in stress and in escape are clear to you. Now we'll talk about one more famous concept by J.M. Hopkins, that is the sprung rhythm. हॉपकिंस ने इस बात पे फोकस किया कि पोइट्री की जो रिदम है वो बिल्कुल वैसी होनी चाहिए जैसा कि हम नॉर्मल डे टू डे लाइफ में हमारी नेचुरल रिदम होती है स्पीच की, वैसे ही पोइट्री की रिदम होनी चाहिए. सो स्प्रंग रिदम इज अ पोइटिक रिदम डिजाइंड टू इमिटेट द रिदम ऑफ नेचुरल स्पीच. नाउ बिकॉज स्प्रंग रिदम आर्टिफिशियल रिदम नहीं होती है, वो नेचुरल रिदम होती है जैसा कि हम नॉर्मली बोलते हैं. तो स्प्रंग रिदम में जो नंबर ऑफ सिलेबल्स होते हैं एक फुट के अंदर, वो इनडिटर्मिनेट नंबर हो सकते हैं, कितने भी हो सकते हैं. बेसिकली जो स्प्रंग रिदम है वो स्ट्रेस टाइम्ड होती है, वो सिलेबल टाइम्ड नहीं होती. And it is constructed from feet in which the first syllable is stressed and may be followed by a variable number of unstressed syllables. And to cap it, this is a poetic rhythm that imitates the rhythm of speech, and it is stress timed rather than syllable timed. Well, I hope all the three concepts are pretty clear to you by now, and I would advise you to make notes for all these three concepts. Collect the materials from internet with examples and make notes for all three concepts: inscape, instress, and sprung rhythm. And you can quote the poetry of Hopkins to make your answers more clear and more compact. Why I'm asking you to make notes for these concepts is because all these three concepts are very important when it comes to competitive exams, because these are often repeated in every single examination of English literature. So it would be good for you if you make notes for all these concepts. I hope you're all set to take up the poem Spring and Fall. This is a modern poem about philosophical definition of human life, and then this is a poem about death. But what is special about this poem is that this poem is about death, but this one is addressed to a young child. And that's the irony of situation, that what a young child has to do with death. But still this poem is addressed to a young child. Her name is Margaret. And the speaker, the poet, is talking to a kid. Her name is Margaret, and she's crying eyes out or something. And when the poet sees her crying, he decides that she's crying because all the leaves in the forest have died and fallen off the trees. जो छोटी बच्ची है मार्गरेट, वो पेड़ों से पत्तों को गिरते हुए देखती है एंड वो बहुत ज़्यादा रोती है. और जब पोइट उसको ऑब्जर्व करता है तो वो कंक्लूड करता है कि ये बच्ची इसलिए रो रही है क्योंकि उसको लग रहा है कि जिस तरह से पेड़ से सब पत्ते जा रहे हैं, सब पत्तों की डेथ हो रही है, सेम फेट उसका भी होगा. दैट इज उसी तरह से एक दिन उसकी लाइफ भी एंड हो जाएगी और यही रीज़न है कि वो रो रही है. दिस इज़ व्हाट द पोइट मेक्स आउट. And then as a philosopher, the poet asks Margaret, the speaker asks Margaret not to cry, not to grieve over Golden Grove unliving, because it's a part of cycle and it's very natural. Please pay attention to the text of the poem on your screen as we are going to take the poem up line by line. Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unliving? Leaves like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? As the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder, by and by, nor spare a sigh. The walls of vanward leave me lie, and yet you will weep and know why. Now no matter, child, the name, sorrow's springs are the same, nor mouth had, no, nor mind expressed, what heart heard of, ghost guessed. It is the blight man was born for, it is Margaret you mourn for. The poem is addressed to a young child, Margaret, and she is crying. So the poem opens with a question to the child, and the poet asks, Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unliving? the tree is losing its leaves as winter is coming, and the child, with her fresh thoughts, with her innocence, she cares about the leaves. But what she actually cares about is the things of man. The speaker reflects that age will later change her as an individual. The poet is concerned about Margaret, and he asks her that why are you grieving? And then he himself answers that are you grieving because the golden groves are unliving, because the tree is shedding the leaves, and you are crying over it, that the tree is shedding the leaves. And then he states that maybe you are grieving for your own self, because you are comparing your own plight with that of the tree, that the way the tree is leaving its leaves, same way one day your life would leave you. And that the child is caring for her own life, and she's worried about her own fate, she's worried about her own life. And the speaker reflects that age will later alter this innocent response, that now she's a kid, she's innocent, that's why she's crying over the shedding of leaves from the tree. But when she will grow up, when she will grow older, then she will forget about it, because then she won't be affected by such sights, because she will get maturity. And when she will get mature, she won't be affected even if the whole forest will lie leafless. And she won't have any sympathy for the tree at that time when she will get mature. बेसिकली पोइट यहाँ असर्ट करना चाह रहे हैं कि मार्गरेट अभी पेड़ों से पत्तों के गिरने पे रो रही हैं, वो इतनी इनोसेंट है. सी द एक्सप्रेशन फ्रेश थॉट्स मीन्स उसके जो विचार हैं अभी वो फ्रेश हैं, अभी इनोसेंट हैं, इसलिए उसके मन में इतनी सिंपैथी है इन पेड़ों के लिए जिनके पत्ते गिर रहे हैं. एंड पोइट का ये भी कहना है, ये मानना है कि वो एक्चुअल में खुद से कंपेयर कर रही है उन पत्तों को, कि जिस तरह से उन पेड़ों से पत्ते गिर रहे हैं उसी तरह से एक ना एक दिन उसकी भी डेथ हो जाएगी, बिकॉज नथिंग लास्ट्स फॉर एवर. सो जो मार्गरेट है वो रियलाइज कर पा रही है इन चीज़ों को इंट्यूटिवली, और इसीलिए वो इतनी सैड है एंड शी इज़ ग्रीविंग. एंड आगे एक रिफ्लेक्शन है पोइट का कि जैसे जैसे मार्गरेट बड़ी होगी, एज द हार्ट ग्रोज ओल्डर, दैट इज एज शी वुड एज, इट विल कम टू सच साइट्स कोल्डर. तो ये सब कुछ देखने की उसको आदत पड़ जाएगी, उसको बहुत सारी तकलीफें देखने की, उसको बहुत सारी पासिंग देखने की आदत पड़ जाएगी. बाय एंड बाय नॉर स्पेयर अ साई, दो वर्ल्ड ऑफ वैनवुड लीफ मिल डाई. और तब एक टाइम ऐसा आएगा जब पूरा का पूरा जो जंगल है, पूरा का पूरा जो फॉरेस्ट है, अगर वो सारे पत्ते भी गिर जाएंगे तब भी उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, उसके पास उसको देखने का भी वक्त नहीं होगा. And then the poet goes ahead, as the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder, that when she will grow older, she won't care about it. It will come to such sights colder, because she would become habitual of visualizing these kind of sights. उनको इस सब चीज़ों को देखने की आदत पड़ जाएगी. बाय एंड बाय नॉट स्पेयर अ साई, और तब वो बिल्कुल इस पे बिल्कुल भी नहीं रोएंगी, बिल्कुल इसके बारे में कोई वो आहें नहीं भरने वाली है. शी इज नॉट गोइंग टू वीप ओवर इट, शी इज नॉट गोइंग टू ग्रीव ओवर such sights, because she will get used to it. But she would rather worry about her own life, about more serious things, about other things. And then he further suggests that all the grief, in fact, stems from the same source. That is, everything in life shares the source of grief. And he makes use of a popular expression here that sorrow's springs are the same, which signifies that all the sorrows in the world share the same source, and that source is the realization of one's own mortality, one's own transitoriness. And since Margaret is a kid, she is not able to articulate it. Her mind is not capable to articulate it, but still she is able to feel it intuitively. It is a whisper to the heart, something guessed at by the ghost of spirit. That is, her spirit can feel it. Her spirit is the ghost which the poet is referring to. Her heart knows it. Her heart knows about the impending mortality, the impending realization that one day she too is destined to die. She too will die. And this realization is felt by the heart, which focuses on the notion of the fact that all grieving points back to the self, to one's own suffering of losses, and ultimately to one's own mortality. Now, one thing peculiar about the speaker here is that his tone towards the child is tender and sympathetic. And he doesn't try to comfort her. And it's questionable that if he is addressing his reflections to the child, because all of his reflections are beyond her level of understanding, since Margaret is just a kid, and it's questionable. Margaret's way of confronting loss is quite emotional. She's getting emotional on the shedding of the leaves, and the poet is quite philosophical here. He's poetical, he's generalizing, and he's much more mature. And it's a poet basically who is mourning for his own mortality, and then he's watching the same thing happening in Margaret, or maybe he's feeling it, he's overdoing it. We all worry our decay. We are always tensed about our own impending death, because we have this realization that we are mortals and we are destined to die one day, and that's what makes us sad, and that is something which is making Margaret sad. Though at right now she can't make out that this is the reason of her grief. She can't articulate this thing, she can't speak this thing, she can't word it out, but basically this is the reason that she's crying. And when she will grow up, when she will grow older, then she would realize it, and then she would cry for this reason, that she is a mortal and she would die. There is a dichotomy between the unliving of Golden Grove and the dawning realization of Margaret about her own future, about her own plight. The Golden Grove is unliving, and the trees are losing their yellow leaves, and this is what makes Margaret conscious of her own fate, of her own destiny. Margaret is innocent with her fresh thoughts, and she lives in a perfect harmony with nature, and this is the reason that she has this capacity to sympathize with the Golden Grove and the unleaving of trees. When he asserts that everyone dies and everyone lives, and their death should be a celebration of their life, and one should not mourn the death, one should not mourn the passing, as it's the law of nature. And the advice which the poet gives to Margaret is that as you grow older, you will see many tragic events. Many tragic events happen, and that is just a part of life, and one should be able to, one should have the habit to take the life in flow. This poem is built upon a series of contrasts, as the very title suggests that this poem is about spring and fall, youth and age, death and life. But more than that, this poem is about the moment in a child's life when she suddenly realizes that her childhood is not going to last forever, that someday children grow up, they grow old, and eventually they die. And the message of this poem is that death is a fact of life. It is the blight man was born for, as the line 14 states in the poem. So everyone at some point needs to face up to this. As we all are mortals, so this poem has a message that everyone can relate to. The title of the poem is so appropriate, as we can associate the youth of Margaret with the spring of the title. Margaret is young, so it's her springtime, and she's grieving over the falling of leaves, and indirectly she's worrying, she's grieving over her own fall. So the title is very appropriate here. And then it also has the connotations of biblical fall of man from the heaven, that primordial episode of loss which initiated human mortality and suffering, in contrast the life of a young child, as Hopkins has suggested in this poem. And Margaret's sensitive knave mind is grief-stricken at the sight of strewn fallen leaves, and she worries about her own fall, though she herself can't make out, she herself can't realize her pain. She can't realize that what is that thing which is making her so grief-stricken. But the poet can reflect on it, the poet can understand it, that what exactly she's crying for, and she's crying for the fall. But the poet can understand that this is the affliction, that this is the curse for which man is born, which man is destined to, that is, that man is destined to die. Death is inevitable. It's a fact of life. One just can't change it. So it's better to accept it with grace. Because there's no point grieving. And then he concludes the poem that I know Margaret, you're crying for this very reason, that you're crying for your own mortality, that you're crying for your own death, because you are comparing the plight of the leaves, the plight of the strewn fallen leaves, with your own life, with your own impending death, and that is the reason you're crying. But there's no use crying like this. This poem is an Italian sonnet. It has 14 lines, and the rhyme scheme of the poem is ABBA, CDC, DCT. And generally sonnets are written in a single stanza, but it's not too uncommon for an Italian sonnet to break up the octave and sestet. So this has two parts, octave and sestet. As it's typical of the Petrarchan sonnets, or any sonnet for that matter, the first part of the poem depicts the tension, depicts Margaret grieving over the unliving of Golden Grove, while the second part offers a resolution that comes from the speaker, that probably that comes from the poet. And now, if we talk about the tone of the poem, then that's elegiac. Because the diction which is used in the poem, the words which are used in the poem, they are mournful words, and it mirrors the poem's theme also, that is the fleeting nature of youth, the fleeting nature of time. And the diction of the poem is exceedingly mournful, and that makes it a sad poem. The touch of sadness is there in the poem, because the little child is mourning. It's mourning the death of the leaves. It's mourning the shedding of leaves from the Golden Grove, and it's comparing her own fate with that of the leaves. And that's what makes the poem elegiac. Spring and Fall is a dramatic poem. It's a meditative poem, and it narrates an event. The little girl Margaret is there, and the speaker is there, and this poem is there in the form of an assumed conversation, and there is a character, there is a dialogue, and the setting and plot is also there in the poem. So this is what makes the poem a dramatic poem. The poem has a lyrical rhythm, and the lines of the poem, they form couplets, and each line has 4 beats. And Hopkins has also incorporated the long pauses in the poem. For example, after Margaret, in the very first line there is a pause, and then in the third line, after leaves, there is a big pause for emphasis. And alliteration too is used there to emphasize. The poem has an almost sing-song kind of an effect, and the rhyme scheme is quite simple. It's more like a children's nursery tune. because the poem is addressed to a young child, and the sound of the poem is quite attractive. And Hopkins has made use of certain new words, like he has made use of unliving, and then he's making use of leaf meal, which reminds us of piecemeal, that is bit by bit, piece by piece. And the frequent use of alliteration also adds to the rhyme of the poem. It also has added to the rhythm of the poem. And the poet is using the unleaving of trees, the shedding of leaves from the golden grove, as a metaphor for the human life, for the mortality of human beings. The shedding of the leaves becomes a symbol of the impending death, about the coming of winter, and winter is often associated with the death, the mortality. The poem has a musical quality to it, and the alliteration has imparted it with an additional effect. For example, we have leaves, like the sound L is repeated, then we have golden groove, then grieving and leaving, care for, can you, again alliteration is there, such sights, and then we have walls of Vanwood, and then will weep and why, then the repetition of S sound, sorrows springs are the same, and then we have heart of ghost, the repetition of H sound is there, and then Margaret you mourn for, the repetition of M is there. See, the whole poem is quite musical, and it's linguistically it's quite rich a poem, and it has a very nice rhythm, and because it's addressed to a child, so Hopkins has pretty well taken care of the fact to make it more like a nursery rhyme. And it's very beautifully Hopkins has built upon this poem on a core metaphor, that is the leaving or unleaving of the golden grove, the shedding of the leaves from the trees, and the inevitability of death and the mortality of human beings, that is amalgamated quite beautifully, and Hopkins has presented this idea of mortality quite beautifully through this child and through the shedding of the leaves. Okay, with this we conclude today's video. I hope the poem is clear to you. Should you have any doubts or queries, please leave the comments below. Thank you for your patient listening.